Philippine vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. says COVID-19 vaccines developed by Pfizer, Sinovac, and AstraZeneca may be among the first to arrive in the country. In a virtual meeting Wednesday, January 13, Galvez says this is based on the current status of the government's negotiations with pharmaceutical companies. During the briefing, Galvez also defends the government's decision to choose Sinovac over cheaper vaccine brands. Without divulging the exact price, he says price points being offered by Sinovac are much lower during negotiations than publicly available market prices. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere also assures the public the government would not enter into deals disadvantageous to Filipinos. Galvez earlier announced the rollout of vaccines could begin as soon as February. So far, the Philippines already signed deals to buy at least 30 to 40 million doses of Novavax vaccine. They are expected to arrive in the third quarter of this year. Local government units, private groups, and the national government have also secured at least 15 million doses of AstraZeneca's vaccine through tripartite agreements. Meantime, the Health Department or DOH begins its biogenomic surveillance or collection of samples from the vulnerable and at-risk sectors that will undergo genome sequencing. Vergere says the DOH is not just monitoring the more infectious UK variant, but all possible variants of the deadly virus. The Interior Department or DILG turns over to a House panel signatures of more than 550,000 Filipinos who it claims are open to surgical amendments of the 1987 Constitution. DILG Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya on Wednesday, January 13, formally submits the signatures to the House Committee on Constitutional Amendments. Malaya oversees the Duterte government's federalism campaign. He says the signatures are from 72 out of the 81 provinces nationwide the DILG collected before the lockdown. During the hearing, economists agree now is the time to amend the Constitution to address the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Former National Economic and Development Authority Chief Ernesto Pernia argues the Philippines cannot compete with its ASEAN members if the current restrictions on foreign investments are still in place. National scientist Raul Fabella of the UP School of Economics also agrees, saying lifting the constitutional limit on foreign ownership will make the country more friendly to foreign investors. But in an interview with Rappler, Professor Herman Kraft of the UP Diliman Political Science Department says there's a problem with using the pandemic to justify charter change. He says the amendment of the Constitution is a little more than political exercise and not one that is directed at responding to the effects of the pandemic. New York-based Human Rights Watch or HRW says the Duterte administration appears to take advantage of COVID-19 regulations to expand its gruesome and bloody war on drugs. In a report released Wednesday, January 13, HRW highlights the increase in drug war killings during lockdown and the quote-unquote almost total impunity in the country. The lockdown also led to massive arrests and abuse by state forces since it was first implemented in March 2020. Between March and November, at least 134,000 were arrested for violating community quarantine guidelines. Aside from these, the HRW report also highlights the attacks on press freedom in 2020. These include the cyber libel conviction of Rappler CEO Maria Ressa and former researcher Reynaldo Santos Jr., the shutdown of broadcasting giant ABS-CBN, and the killing of journalists. The massive red tagging of human rights defenders and activists is also noted, especially in the aftermath of the signing of the anti-terror law. HRW Deputy Asia Director Phil Robertson says concerned governments and United Nations agencies will need to press the Duterte administration harder to halt its atrocities and hold those responsible to account. In the United States, at least 3 Republican members of the House of Representatives will vote to impeach President Donald Trump after his supporters stormed the Capitol. John Katko, Adam Kinzinger, and House Leader Liz Cheney all say they are in favor of the historic second impeachment. Cheney adds there has never been a greater betrayal by a U.S. president of his office and his oath to the Constitution. The House plans to vote on Wednesday, January 13 on an article of impeachment charging Trump with inciting insurrection unless he resigns. If Trump is impeached by the House, he will have a trial in the Senate to determine his guilt. A 2/3 majority of the Senate is needed to convict him. This means at least 17 Republicans in the 50-50 chamber will have to vote for conviction. In the Senate, the New York Times reports Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was pleased about the Democratic impeachment push. Meantime, Vice President Mike Pence tells House Speaker Nancy Pelosi he is opposed to invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office. He says Tuesday, January 12, he does not believe that invoking the said amendment is in the best interest of the nation or consistent with the Constitution. He adds, the administration's energy is now focused on ensuring an orderly transition. A YouTube channel Kuyatam TV claims the house of dismissed police senior master sergeant Jonel Nuezca was burned down by neighbors in Paniki, Tarlac. This is false. The Bureau of Fire Protection Paniki in Tarlac denies this claim in a text message to Rappler. The photo of the house used in the video is not the house of Nuezca. Using reverse image search, Rappler finds one of the photos used in the videos was from a 2019 fire at a residential area along Kirikada Street in Santa Cruz, Manila. As of January 13, there had been no news reports that say Nuezca's house was burned down. Nuezca was caught on video killing Sonia Gregorio and her son Frank on December 20, 2020. He is facing 2 counts of murder and is currently detained at the Paniki Municipal Jail.